All right, let's move on. Just a reminder before we do move on, though, England lost today. Let's touch upon what happened with the United States of America. They also lost today against a fantastic Japan side who really just blew me away with how well organized they were, how disciplined they were, the football that they played. It was very, very pretty. 2 goals, one thanks to Daichi Kamada, the 26-year-old Frankfurt attacker. He scored a lovely goal that was obviously checked by video review. Apparently it wasn't there, but then it was there. Great finish from him. And then Mitoma scored in the 88th minute to wrap things up, his 5th national team goal, the Brighton and Hove Albion player. Now, Michael Lahoud, I know the WhatsApp group chat was firing away in your direction because everybody couldn't wait. Let's talk about Team USA. In my opinion, before we get started, they were poor. The defense looked poor. They looked a little bit tired. They looked tentative. They looked nervous. There was only one player that stood out for me today, and it was the goalkeeper, which is tremendously good for the goalkeeper situation, but for what the US are doing and wanting to achieve at this World Cup, that was a really awful performance overall.
I want to be realistic, and I purposely I went ham on Nigel and Benj because I know it's going to come back tenfold. So I'm just covering myself in Kevlar for what's coming. Benj is already, Nigel, both of them are already peppering me with stares of daggers. So realistically, this was not acceptable. If you're a U.S. men's national team fan, you'll be very worried. I'm very worried because look at the unanswered questions with only a couple months ahead of the World Cup. You're still looking for your best center back pairings. That is not a good thing. You're still looking for your best goalkeeper. I think that question has been answered. And Matt Turner, he's your guy. If he doesn't start in that first game of Qatar, massive problems for Gregg Berhalter and his staff and this team. You're still looking for a number 9. And Jesus Ferreira, he might be a player that you put in a different game where you have to break a team down. I don't think he is the clear number 9 for this team. You have a player, you have so many missing pieces. I look at Germany. You have John Brooks. Why he has not been called back into this national team is just one of the biggest mysteries. Maybe off the field issues. We know that's happened with this group during this World Cup cycle. That might be a factor. But when you look up top, you have a player that plays for Union Berlin. And Jordan, is it Pefok? Is it Subotic?
Just call him Jordan.
Jordan, whatever. This guy has a couple goals to his name, couple assists to his name for the Bundesliga leaders. How do you not call a guy like that? Yes, Christian Pulisic is out, and I know the English lads have a couple things to say about that, but there's still a lot of question marks that should not be coming into the fold this close to the World Cup, and they were thoroughly outplayed. I thought they couldn't handle the press. Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman, they crap themselves. I don't know how to say this. I know it's a family show. They crap themselves. There's other words to describe that. They absolutely crap themselves. A lot of the chances Japan had, credit to them, came from the press, and the midfield was overrun. And even in the midfield, last thing I'll say about that, you don't even know where Brennan Aronson's going to play. Is he going to play as an attacking mid? Is he going to play as a winger? That question should be answered. I would play him in the middle of the park because he's proving in the Premier League that he can get it done there. With runs out of midfield, his tenacity on the press, on the counter. I think that's where they're going to get the most out of him. But Gregg Berhalter, he is definitely going to have to do some rethinking ahead of the next match against Saudi Arabia.
James,
I'm going to enjoy this. This wasn't a truly atrocious display of football. And I mean, I know England set a bar quite low. I mean, if we're reversing the time flow here, talking about what we were discussing earlier, England was a low bar, but the US, they didn't just squeeze under it. This wasn't Harrison Ford sliding through in Indiana Jones. They could have walked, they could have jumped under it. It was really poor across the pitch. It starts at the back. And Gregg Berhalter had complaints about the pitch, and rightly so. It was bad, but not so bad that Japan couldn't play some really nice football on that same surface when they won the ball back. This is a team that, and I kind of was listening to Heath and Jimmy on it in Soccer We Trust, and they're kind of talking about how it kind of became clear with that pairing at the back of Zimmerman and Long that there wouldn't really be any pretenses of being able to play nice football, build play from the back. These two didn't look like they could progress the ball into midfield if there were no Japanese players on the pitch. It was
Sunday League.
It's hard. How do you make a judgment call on Jesus Ferreira when the ball never gets that far? That's a real worry. And to do that and then not be, they're so weak under the press. I know this is not, this was an aberration for Germany, for the USA. They've been better. I do understand that, but this was so.
That's debatable.
This was such a depth that they plumbed. It would really worry me, and I think I don't understand what Berhalter wants to do, because he's put out a squad that looks like it should be sit back, keep it tight, try and nick a goal at the other end, but they don't look like they can defend. They don't look like they can counter-attack. They don't look like they can build possession play, all on the basis of this game. It's, they'll do well to get out of the group if they play anywhere near this level. In fact, they'll do well to get any points if they play anywhere near this level.
Go ahead, Nigel.
James. Mike, let me clear my throat.
Oh, man, here we go.
Mike.
Yes.
Do you know what? Ian, I'm disappointed in you first and foremost to say you're actually surprised at Japan in how well they played in the style of football, because Japan are a well-conditioned nation when it comes to football. Always qualified generally for the World Cups. Great footballing team who produce some fantastic technical players. They press very high energy. Let's not forget, you're an Italian fan as well. They produced Nikata for us, the legendary Nikata who was at Bologna and Fiorentina. What a player he was.
Parma as well.
Anyway, let me get to the USA. Mike, where do I start? Like, it's literally, for me, it's absolutely embarrassing. Because for me, Japan is the type of team you really want to test to see how far you've come along as a nation. Because those are the type of games, more than likely, 9 out of 10 times, you will be facing in a World Cup. Forget all these pre-games beforehand or anything like that. Those are the games that you will be playing when the World Cup starts. And if USA crumble just like that, I don't want to hear no USA fanboy saying about we've got the talent, the golden generation, because you are miles off it. The modern game that all these players play in and have experience in, most teams do this high press. You have to be comfortable with the ball under pressure. USA clearly are not. And for me, they're not creating. Defensively is the biggest problem. If they don't sort out their centre-back pairing, they looked all over the place, completely all over the place. It could have finished 4 or 5 today. And your goalkeeper being the best player isn't a bit of a surprise to me, because that's one thing I will give America credit for. They do produce some fantastic top-class goalkeepers. Could we move on from producing top-class goalkeepers to producing top-class players along the pitch to different aspects of the game? Because that's what's truly needed. You can't rely on your goalkeeper consistently. Need to score goals. My biggest thing is, how is America going to do so well with the golden boy, Christian Pulisic, not even playing at Chelsea, gets in the American squad and gets injured to not play? That is worrying. That is completely worrying. Dest doesn't play at AC Milan, comes on, gives away a penalty, and plays in the US national team. And didn't really have a great game again today, Mike. This golden generation that I've heard America's go on so much about, I think that America and the press need to slow down the fanboy thing and realize, as much as you guys are producing some good players, other nations ain't sitting there.
Who's saying that they played well, though, Nigel? No one's saying they played well. No one's saying this. Who's saying this is a golden generation? Who's saying it, though?
A lot of American
reading that this is a golden generation.
Ian, you might not be saying it because you know your football, but a lot of other people, Americans, are saying that this is the golden generation. I've heard it too many times. I've heard people even say America's squad can compare against and compete against England's squad. No, nowhere near when it comes to footballing ability. For me, you should be very, very worried, regardless of what squad he picked. And I'll tell you what is the most worrying thing for me. The fact that the manager at the end of the game pretty much looked so confused and lost in what he just witnessed and was nearly in tears, asking his players to show a bit more personality and character. That is worrying. Your manager should not go and say that, for me, in public or in the press. You can't say that you want more personality and character, because at the end of the day, that's not going to sit well in that dressing room. That's down for the manager to bring out that personality and that character within them players and let them go out there and express themselves. That is the worrying thing for me. And I've always said it, that most of the young athletes that come out in America, their personality and their character, they always play in the NBA or NFL. I very rarely see it in the MLS or in the soccer field. But if you're an American fan, Mike, which I know you are, you should be very worried at that performance.
Go ahead, James. Jump in.
I just wanted to say, I mean, we're not quite done. It's probably a bit of a wound for you now, Mike, but I've just got some salt here and I'm going to salt bay it on. I think the thing that would worry me the absolute most about this, I think certainly I kind of felt like on the commentary there was a little bit of a stereotype, and we all could probably indulge with this in in what we think of Japan. And we don't think of them as a team that can bully their opposition. But guess what? This US team, and we think of the US, and I think we think of players like Zimmerman, and we think of players, even like Tyler Adams, as players that shouldn't lose 50-50 duels. Across the pitch, these players were bouncing off their Japanese opponents. Yeah. And I think that's particularly relevant because, I can't say I know too much about Iran, but I can guarantee you Rob Page will have watched that, and he'll be talking to Gareth Bale, and he'll be talking to, the Ben Davises and players that can assert themselves physically on any opponent. And he'll be saying, what Japan just did, we can do that too. And England will think the same. And I'm sure Iran, who have just beaten Uruguay and clearly are no mugs, will be thinking the same. That for me is the real worry, because I never looked at this US team and thought it would be losing most of the duels it was fighting in. And if that's happening, as well as all the structural things we were just talking about, and I'm sure Nigel has more structural things to point out because there was a lot.
Do you know what? I'm not even going to go on too much about it. I'm just going to say this from Mike's perspective, because obviously he is Mr. USA. Are you worried? No, Mike, seriously though. Are you not really worried about the lack of, forget the manager saying, the lack of character that you saw, the lack of leadership, the lack of personality that you saw from that USA team today against Japan? Are you not worried?
I'm very much worried. I think that this is a culmination of getting away with things during CONCACAF qualifying. That winning, as we all know, winning covers up so many cracks. And the teams that are winning and doing it the right way and doing it in the style, the cracks are minimal. For this U.S. team, you go and play certain teams in weather you should never be allowed to play in to get a result. And you purposely do the game there and do it's the dark arts of CONCACAF qualifying. So you do what you have to do to qualify. Teams do it all around the world. But that is what you hang your hats on. I think they've gotten away with a lot of things. A player who I think could be the X factor to rectify that is the likes of a Gio Reyna. Can he stay healthy? And I'm looking for a response. We'll know a lot more. I think Gregg Berhalter, the look that you saw on his face was the realization of a manager of, oh crap, my team may not be as good as I thought they were. We may have to go back into being pragmatic and maybe scrape for a 1-0 or 0-0 and do the mathematical equation to try and sneak out of our group. I think him and his staff will be scratching their heads, looking for a response. I know I am looking for a response. It's almost like a must-win sort of response to have continued faith in this team, because there are a lot of players who are not in a good way right now. You look at Weston McKennie. I didn't even notice he was on the field. I noticed him because of his haircut. That was about it. Didn't see any wizardry.
I think you're all pretty much too nice, because I know that producer Des is trying to get us out of here without allowing me to have my say on even my nation. And even though I sound like this, I was still born in California. I still have a US passport, and I still have a say as to what happens around the US national team, having also represented them at youth level. Let me tell you, that was freaking embarrassing. Nowhere near good enough. Nowhere good enough tactically. Nowhere good enough with the spirit. Nowhere good enough with the passion. Nowhere good enough as far as energy. The players look tired. I mean, Weston McKennie looked very poor in this game. You look for your leaders, Tyler Adams. The players are disagreeing with each other. McKennie, after a poor pass, looking over to Adams, blaming each other for poor passes. I take nothing away from what Japan did in that game. It was fantastic. They were good footballing-wise. They had a clear plan, a clear idea, and they played some good football, and they probably should have scored more goals thanks to Matt Turner. It wasn't more goals in that game. However, it was a complete disgrace what we witnessed. I will say this, though. When I looked at the images coming out of Dusseldorf, it took me back to my days playing in Germany, because the last time I played at that stadium, I got a red card, and I can guarantee you, if I was playing for Team USA in that game, I would have got another freaking red card, because there was no passion there. There was nothing there from this team.